Over the past number of years, the cyberpunk genre has had a renaissance. Emerging from a period of cultural obscurity, we've been gifted with works across many mediums. Cyberpunk 2077, along with Edgerunners, Blade Runner 2049, Altered Carbon, The Peripheral, and even Mr. Robot. What is driving the popularity of this vintage genre, and what does it mean about us and our society? Hear out my argument, and by the end of the video, hopefully we will find some common ground as to the growing relevance of this genre. Cyberpunk stands out as a genre renowned for its uncanny ability to foreshadow numerous aspects of today's technology. Anecdotally, the book Burning Chrome, published in 1982 by William Gibson, introduced the term cyberspace to our language. It's now a ubiquitous part of our daily vocabulary, a testament to cyberpunk's ability to both foresee and in some ways influence the development of technology. However, it's not the genre's capacity to foresee technological advancements that is driving its growth, or the genre's iconic and distinctive aesthetic. Rather, cyberpunk's true strength lies in its capacity to discern and anticipate broader societal themes that are either unfolding or have already been fully realized. And this is why the genre's relevance and impact is growing once again, as many of these themes are genuinely manifesting in our own world. Works like Neuromancer, Cyberpunk 2077, and Blade Runner are frequently cited for their striking visual aesthetics or descriptions. This is often regarded as the defining element of cyberpunk. However, it's the underlying themes inherent in cyberpunk that truly define the genre. This is why Mr. Robot, despite lacking the traditional cyberpunk aesthetic, is often categorized as cyberpunk due to its thematic resonance with the genre. I believe it's these themes that are driving the genre's increasing relevance. So let's begin with the theme which we will find ourselves at time and time again. High-tech, low life is often a phrase used to describe cyberpunk. We don't need to get lost in the technological labyrinth of Hosaka decks, cyberware, and AI to understand that technology has advanced to such a degree that it permeates every facet of society. In cyberpunk, we don't own technology, it owns us. We don't watch media anymore, it watches us and our habits. We are simply nodes by which the machine can extract more data for higher profits. Low life in cyberpunk refers to the gritty, often dystopian, and sometimes marginalized way of life. It can entail poverty, crime, corruption, or any form of social decay. In Blade Runner, the decay was the loss of empathy and stripping people of their humanity with the reintroduction of slave labor. Social decay in the 1980s and therefore early cyberpunk was often expressed relating to growing crime. But more recently, we're also seeing climate change being represented as a form of decay in cyberpunk media, showing that it's not so much the example we use to express the theme of decay, but rather the theme itself which has driven its rise in popularity. We live in a time where there are multiple forms of decay happening across the Western world, and generally speaking, the world as a whole. Climate change is affecting everywhere. Countries are seeing a continuing polarization and degradation of political and particularly democratic institutions. And to some degree, crime, specifically petty crime, is on the rise again in many countries and cities. With all this going on, it's logical that cyberpunk serves as the platform by which we critique our society. People living this low life are disenfranchised and struggling to survive in a hostile society. Cyberpunk depicts large portions of society teetering on the edge of total collapse, living in a structure which traps them in an uneasy existence. threatening them with desolation such as homelessness and poverty if they were to ever stop overworking, to fuel the insatiable extraction of profits by powerful corporations. Now, the concept of overworking is relative, and it's more the theme of low life rather than the example which is making Cyberpunk so popular. But I would actually like to discuss Cyberpunk 2077's depiction of the work-life relationship and how it relates to low life and high tech. The significant strides in technology have facilitated hyper-efficient working populations, seemingly freeing individuals from the constraints of fatigue through the adoption of cyberware, altering their bodies with machine parts in order to be more effective workers. However, this purported liberation of fatigue for the individual primarily serves the interest of corporations, compelling individuals to sacrifice increasing portions of their lives to work. Rather than resulting in greater benefits for the people, the heightened efficiency of work merely increases the burden placed on the working population, demanding a perpetual growth in productivity. While we're talking in high-level themes, we are seeing almost these exact trends play out in our society. Unfortunately, we are missing the cool aesthetic of cyberpunk, but we're not missing this concept. High-tech, low life. This is actually really well expressed by the show Mr. Robot, which is set in 2015 and is a far more grounded expression of cyberpunk, if you want to interpret it that way. It shows we are technologically advanced, and people are living in a world where there is low life and corporations have run amok with high tech. I'm sure you know of places in your own country where people almost live in poverty or do live in poverty, while you and I have access to share videos over vast networks that sprawl the entire earth. It is high tech, low life. Human isolation is a common theme within the cyberpunk genre. Our protagonists are usually isolated in some manner, which falls under low life but is deserving of its own discussion. This isolation can be communicated explicitly or implicitly. Neuromancer introduces Case as a solitary figure navigating the neon-lit streets of Night City, betrayed by the woman he once trusted. This explicit portrayal stands in contrast to Blade Runner, where the meticulous set design of Deckard's apartment and cinematography serve to depict his profound sense of loneliness and isolation. These are just two examples, yet it is a reoccurring theme in cyberpunk, and it's something we are all forced to deal with. I think we've all heard the phrase, despite our unprecedented level of connectivity, we find ourselves more isolated than ever before, or some variation of it, and it's not untrue. Clichés are clichés for a reason. It's not just the theme of isolation that we relate to. Many genres explore it, but cyberpunk's setting is best suited to critique our own experience of isolation. Referring back to high technology, we often see the meshing of technology and isolation into one theme. Cyberpunk argues that higher technology actually drives societal isolation. Technology pushes us to isolation by replacing face-to-face interaction with virtual social interaction. Spending hours scrolling through social media feeds or chatting online gives the illusion of socializing, but it lacks the depth and richness of real-life interactions. Cyberpunk media presents technology as more than a basic vice we are drawn to. It is almost sentient, and in some cases is sentient. Technology has agency and its own motives, and will leverage whatever it can to reach its goals. Most often this is depicted through artificial intelligences, such as Wintermute in Neuromancer, or Cyberpunk 2077's Delamain, the Black Wall, and Alt Cunningham, each one with their own goals, from running a taxi agency to taking revenge on an oppressive multinational conglomerate. Using the data it has gathered on us, social media recommender systems tricks us into passive forms of entertainment that encourage solitary behavior. It encourages loneliness. So it's not simply a one-way relationship, and Cyberpunk captures this. The technology we engage with fine-tunes itself to become more addictive to the user, further exacerbating the issue of isolation. In a sense, I actually think the presence of this theme and the growth of Cyberpunk shows a collective self-awareness of this problem, and I hope one day we can reverse the damage which was done. The people, the corporations, and the government are three parts to a reoccurring theme in cyberpunk media. It's the interplay between people, the increasing influence of corporations, and governmental apathy. Cyberpunk media depicts a future where corporate interests infiltrate every aspect of society, surveying, constraining, and relentlessly profiteering from the general population by any means possible. The book Neuromancer, with its Tessier Ashpool organization, highlights this theme. Mr. Robot's E-Corp, Cyberpunk 2077's Arasaka, and Militech are all further examples. The effect these corporations have on the population once again leads us back to low life. In cyberpunk media, we most often see corporations operate essential public services such as healthcare, policing, the provision of water and transportation, along with a complete takeover of housing. Corporations find themselves becoming increasingly militaristic, driving a growth in private militaries. All of this to the detriment of the people and consumers. These services become more and more expensive, the quality becomes worse, and the accessibility reduces greatly. When we discuss these concepts through the lens of an alternative universe, we seem to better understand how detrimental it is. But let's pause for a second and ask ourselves, is this all happening currently? Are corporations controlling healthcare, policing, the provision of water and transportation? Are they in control of housing? Is the quality of the products we are purchasing increasing or decreasing? I believe there is a strong dissonance between discussing this theme in cyberpunk and when we discuss it in our society. It's almost as if we fail to accept we are marching towards this outcome. In some way, the popularity of cyberpunk shows, once again, that there is an untapped awareness of this. The apathy shown by governments in cyberpunk media to the populace and their encouragement of corporate infringement to increase often nebulous economic metrics is another trend we see unfold around us. To further it, even more detached super-governmental and international organizations such as the World Bank and the World Economic Forum genuinely do have an impact in this area and actively encourage the growth at all costs approach, leading to very little thought being put into the quality of growth, how much of that increases the living conditions of the population, and who really benefits from this economic growth. All of this, in a sense, contributes once again to low life, which we see around us every day. Finally, the structure of cyberpunk stories rarely features the protagonist saving the world. Instead, it is often a story of the protagonist surviving a hostile world, making a name for themselves in a society with low standards of living, and leveraging advanced technology to succeed in their mission. As we are all protagonists in our own lives, in a world which is increasingly becoming hostile, we are relating more and more to these protagonists. Case, V, Deckard, David. I just hope that we don't fall further into this dystopian society. This outcome is preventable. We shouldn't fear change itself, but only who we might change into.